you all to the eGrow Friday webinar series. Really thankful to you, all of you, for accepting our invite and coming for this webinar on the panel and to chair the session, of course. As you know, eGrow has been conducting this webinar series on important contemporary issues. And in the recent past, India has been pursuing growth and we want to achieve Viksit Bharat. We have a limited time of 22 years. Our demographic window is only available for 20 years. We know that when aging starts taking place, like Japan, where 40% of the population is above 60 years, in India today is only 8% of the population, which of course translates to nearly 11, 12 crores. But when aging takes over, it's very difficult to attain a certain high level of growth. Though we are the fastest growing economy, large economy in the world, we take pride in that, 6.5%. But on a per capita income of US 2880, we know we have a very long way to go to enter the Viksit Club, which starts around 17,000 USD. A long journey. The Prime Minister has given the economists, the policymakers, the state governments a target to achieve the Viksit Bharat. We are in the Amrit Kal of Viksit Bharat. Everything is happening smoothly. The growth in the country is smoothly taking place. The fiscal policy is being carefully crafted and delivered. The monetary policy is delivering. And then suddenly, Pahalgam happens. It's a spanner on the growth path of the country. And it is worrisome. But then, was it once in a situation type of a thing? If you read economic history, we all know Japan had its own share of very fast growth. And then many things that slowed the growth of Japan. Actually, for an economist, the lost decade of Japan, the first, second, and the third, are not accidental. And anybody has a doubt should read Plaza Accord, Louvre Accord. In an economist mind, this is obvious that is this growth trajectory which we are following, which is many countries are envious of it. Is anything being done to derail it? So, eGrow Foundation was very worried when the whole thing happened. For I'm sure everybody in the country was worried from various angles and reasons. But as an economist and as a think tank, we were very worried, a country which is in pursuit of high growth. After the Pahalgam incident, many things happened, and we are here to discuss that. The Prime Minister also then sent delegations to various parts of the world, 33 countries to be precise, including Europe. What are the implications? What are the advantages? We all know, we all were worried, we all felt sad when a ceasefire was announced. We were winning the battle. We were doing so well, and ceasefire announced. But as an economist, when I think to grow, I need peace. If we have conveyed our message and we are not vindictive, and we want to continue on the growth trajectory, maybe the best is what we did. To discuss these various angles and aspects, today we have a panel, a very contemporary issue that we are facing. What are the implications? To discuss the economic implications, we have a very seasoned economist, Professor Deshpande, a dear friend, and an economist of reputation. These issues that have happened, what is the historical context? We have Professor Kondapalli, professor from JNU, who is an expert on Chinese and in the history of the region, speaking to us. The Prime Minister constituted 7 groups of MPs, members of the Lok Sabha. And today we have invited Mr. Atul, who's been the Additional Secretary Lok Sabha himself, to share his thoughts on all these issues. He is connecting from Canada, where it is 4 a.m. in the morning, but because the topic was so important, he readily agreed to join us. Now we all know what we went through. There was a war and a ceasefire, and that's not easy to handle. So we have Lieutenant General P.S. Rajeshwar, retired, who has handled these issues himself when he was in the army and later on when he was heading the think tank on defense issues. Finally, to chair this important discussion, we invited Ambassador Puri, who has himself been a diplomat, a career diplomat, has been at the United Nations, has been in different countries, but most importantly, he has been part of the delegation that went to various parts of the world to tell the world India's side of the story. And that we want to grow. We have the urge to grow. And these panels which are thrown on our growth path are not really good. A country the size that India is, more than a continent, highly diversified, it's very important that for global growth, global welfare, India also grows. And the diversified India that we are, and the language of diversified India is unity in diversity, as Ambassador Puri would tell us in more detail. In such a country which demonstrates to the real world how we can all grow together, it's important that the growth is permitted and span is not thrown. With this brief introduction of the topic, the context, I hand over the session to Ambassador Puri to take the proceedings further. Ambassador Puri, over to you.
Professor Charan Singh, thank you very much. Can you all hear me, sir? You can. No, thank you very much. And thank you to IGRO once again for hosting a webinar on a complex but contemporarily and for India very important, let me say, geopolitical, geoeconomic, and geostrategic subject. Thank you very much for doing this. You mentioned, Professor Charan Singh, that you are worried about a spanner in the works on our quest for a and right. So I think is perhaps more important for any such quest than peace. And peace certainly is a very important element, and that includes free of terrorism and free of all such acts, which look like acts of war and which have the impact of disrupting the society. Let's not forget that Pahalgam is a very different kind of attack. We've had terrorism in India sponsored from across the border for a very long time. We've had such mass incidents. In fact, Mumbai has been at the receiving end of at least 2 of them. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the 1990s, the very big ones where the stock exchange was targeted. And then the very, very famous one, 2008, where the Taj Mahal Hotel, the Oberoi Hotel, and so many other places were targeted. Unbelievable sets of attacks. Our parliament has been attacked in the past. But in the last few years, we've managed to stem much of this in various ways. But the attacks that took place were against military targets, convoys of people, the Uri attack, if people recall, and so on. But what was so special about Pahalgam? I think 2 things are standout and they are important for IGRO. And then I'm going to mention another reason why I'm glad that IGRO is hosting this seminar. The first one was that this attempt in Pahalgam sought to disrupt and, in a sense, tear at the societal fabric of India. We pride ourselves, and rightly so, that we are an inclusive society. Everybody is Indian, is part of it, and certainly part of the growth story. What the fellows tried to do in this was to tear at that. Look at the choice of people. 26 people died. One was a Kashmiri, he was a Muslim. There was a Nepali, by the way, who died. Two were Christians, the rest were Hindus. People all called out for their religion and attacked, particularly dastard. The second particular thing, which is of serious importance, is look, we all know, and we can debate those subjects somewhere else, that Jammu and Kashmir, the Kashmir Valley, etc., has had several sets of, let me say, impediments to taking its growth story forward in the last 5 years. They may have long term benefits in the past, that's a different matter, but a lot of things have been happening in the last year. Suddenly, from the last year, what the fruits of all those things coming together. This year, there were literally lakhs of tourists who were visiting there. And that's why perhaps it gave us the possibility of this attack to take place. And so, what have the chaps done? Let me be very clear about it. Whether it's the resistance front or their supporters, the LET, or even behind them, their masters, the Pakistani establishment, they claim that they are friends of the Kashmiris. And what did they do? They destroyed the very basic fundamentals of what the Kashmiris require for a better quality of life, earnings, livelihoods, and etc. What do you think is the state of tourism in Jammu and Kashmir today? It can't be what would have been normally expected. And what a sad story. And if this is what friends are about, I really don't know what I should say to anyone. But Professor Saab, before I call the panelists, I want to say another reason why I think you, as a foundation, were an apt foundation to host this. This delegations, the 7 delegations that were set up, they mostly included politicians. Most of them were members of parliament from both the lower house, the Lok Sabha, as well as the Rajya Sabha. But there were several who are senior, retired members of who have served in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, who have served as ministers, etc. And then there was at least one of us, a former ambassador, attached with each of the delegations. It was something very interesting also to note that the delegations in their composition reflected this societal fabric of India, representing people from different parts of the country, representing the different societal straits. And I'll be very clear: ethnicity, religion, every single aspect of it. And let me make the final point: they were opposition heavy. And that, perhaps in my mind, was perhaps the most important, because symbolic of what India is, the world's largest democracy. Now, why do I say that you are a rightful place to host this seminar, other than the host of those which are taking place in the political think tanks and so on and so on? Because I'll tell you my experiences of visiting Russia, Slovenia, Spain. One of the reasons why every country was willing to listen to us, why everybody wanted to try and see what it is for a very simple reason: where India is today, the growth of India, and what it means for their national interest. Let me make a simple point to you. I don't think many of us are aware, and I certainly wasn't aware, that India is Slovenia's second largest trading partner in Asia after China. Do you know what it means for the Slovenian parliamentarians? Similarly, in the context of Russia, of course, we all know Spain. Look at that huge order that we've had for purchase of those two-engine aircraft. Do you think it's a country of interest to them? And believe me, at the end of the day, for all countries in the world, India included, nothing is more important than your self-interest. Of course, there are many factors to it, but one simple, straightforward factor, and I'm putting it very bluntly, is where does the money come into your wallet? It makes a difference. India is a country of interest to the world, literally to every single country, including those that we turn around and say they're not well disposed towards us. It's because of the size of our economy. And Brother Chan Singh, you started off by mentioning Viksit Bharat, and then you spoke in terms of per capita income. For you and me as Indians, that's very important. Our own quality must improve. But think of yourself as a country which is outside. That, sir, is your problem. They would certainly like that your per capita income goes up. You can buy more jeans and t-shirts and what should I say, high value items, etc. But in the fundamental analysis, it's your aggregate and in nominal terms, not purchasing power parity terms, which appeals to them. The reason, you have the money to buy what they have to sell, and they are only looking at aggregates. Too bad that some people are poor. How does it matter to the Spaniards who are selling those two engine aircraft to us, each of which is costing millions of dollars? They'll sympathize with you, but the rest is your problem. This is therefore very important. The fact that we are now on the verge of becoming the fourth largest economy in the world, this is what matters. And this is what people are interested in. So I particularly believe that it's very important that EGROW is, hosting it, because it is an economic issue and a reflection of where we are on economy. Now, Professor Charan Singh, if you agree with me and if all the panelists agree, I would request the four of our panelists here, and we have, like me, a practitioner in Mr. Atul Kaushik, who's also served, by the way, in the Indian mission in Geneva to the WTO. So, Atul, welcome to this webinar here. We have Lieutenant General with us, Rajeshwar here, senior officer. And then we have Professor Kondapalli, in a sense, the best, perhaps the best exponent here in India of analyzing what is perhaps the point in this whole thing. I can't forget, but recall today's newspapers where somebody said we weren't only facing Pakistan in Operation Sindoor. There were two other countries aligned behind him, and he mentioned China and Turkey in that order. So let's leave the second one out. I have different ideas of that. But the first one, there should be nobody in the world, not even those who are opposed to us, who don't buy that. So we have Professor Kondapalli to dissect all this. And finally, after all this, and before we move into the Q&A, I'll try and share with everyone what at least we went through in our delegation, and I'll add a little bit of what I could garner from other groups when we met them all together at the Prime Minister's tea that was hosted for all the groups put together. So I want to thank EGROW once again. Tremendous. General Saab, are you ready? Where are you? I don't see you on the screen. General Saab, you are there. Very good. Excellent. General Saab, the headline here was war and diplomacy. And then the subtext was Operation Sindoor, reaching out to 33 countries, etc. So without going into, the philosophy of diplomacy and war, which comes first, is diplomacy another word for war, is war another word for diplomacy? Without going into all those polemics, it's a long-term discussion. We'll ask Professor Kondapalli to invite us one day for those kind of theoretical discussions. Let's remain focused on Operation Sindoor and that, let's say, the two aspects of it. But the first and important aspect is the military action. We know what happened in Pahalgam. So it'd be very nice if you would brief people over, should I say, about 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes on your way of looking at Operation Sindoor. What happened? Did we achieve our objectives and so on? And did it necessarily mean that we needed to take the next step of diplomacy? Professor Charan Singh mentioned something about we were very disappointed. Sir, I don't agree with you there at all. I understand where you come from. And I understand why a lot of people come from those kind of ideas. We should be a little more careful about listening to the blowhorn which is pointed to yourself. And I don't want to go into Donald Trump and all that business. We'll have a discussion on that after all of you have spoken, because it's a nice thing and we are here discussing about ourselves. We as Indians have no doubt that the hotline played the greatest role. There should be no doubt in our mind. General Saab, the screen is yours. I will keep quiet.
Thank you, Ambassador Manjeev Puri. I hope you all can hear me. Right. Yeah, and very good afternoon to all panelists, Dr. Charan, and the attendees on the webinar. The first aspect that I would like to state is like what the ambassador said. I think the primary thing is to first understand the classification of the conflict. Because if you see the conflict any other way, you will end up getting lessons which may not be pertinent for a situation later on. So, one, to my mind, can classify it either as a crisis or a short of war situation, but definitely not a war situation. However, uh, as we know, if escalation control, a ladder on which both sides actually embark, goes awry, you can end up in war. So, as far as the military and the people who are involved, in fact, it is a situation of full war, while the rest of the world can understand that it is being calibrated. So, this is point one. Point two, I think one of the main things, some of the reasons, causes you said why we went in for the operation. But what we achieved, to my mind, was exhibiting our resolve or will that we could strike across the international border. We sent a clear message to Pakistan that we will not tolerate terrorism. This was our objective, and we adopted something which is akin to a strategy which the Israelis have to some extent of mowing the grass, which means if you look at 2016, 19, and 25, uh, some analysts have said that whenever terrorism shows its face, we act, right? Uh, and in this, the aim was limited to terrorist targets initially, no civilian or military targets. But once the adversary hit us, we then expanded the scale and scope of the operation. Now, the third point to ask is, what was the effect of this? Because a lot of people have talked about deterrence against terrorism. Was it established? My answer is no. The reason basically is very simple. Pak as a state sponsors terrorism. This is their raison d'etre of the Pak army. It will continue to be this there. The number of terrorists who are there are known world over, which is what I think all our delegations would have also brought to fore. Uh, so, uh, our experience or my experience as a security practitioner, and I spent a lot of time in J&K, I know that once terrorist modules are launched and they are inducted and they are on our territory, they often act independently on opportunity. So anybody can go. I mean, it's not so controlled or calibrated. So they can seize the opportunity and strike. So against terrorism, it's a very long drawn war. It is not a very short thing. So it is difficult to build terrorism efforts, small efforts all across, whether we went to the FATF or whatever else we did, all these chip in. So this is a long war against terrorism if you look at it. Now, what actually becomes, a little more challenging is our very declaratory statement now that next terror act will be construed as an act of war. So what it looks at is, and of course, on the other hand, the Op Sindoor is paused. It is a ceasefire which can be lifted anytime. So this is the lying complication as of the moment for everyone to prepare and be prepared for. Okay. One aspect that I would say is, uh, in diplomacy and war, where did diplomacy fit in before, during, and after this operation? So before the operation actually took place, the foreign minister on X, he said very clearly the perpetrators, backers, and planners of the attack must be brought to justice. Pak, of course, as is wont, it rejected this linkage. But this was a very clear message. And then there were other messages which apparently there was a review. So I won't go into that. But during the operations from 7th to 10th, we had India's ambassador to the US who said that we are at war with terrorists. and we want to bring justice to their victims and hold the terrorists accountable, and that the world should tell Pakistan to stop supporting terrorism. Right. So our ambassador to UK, he showed this photograph of Abdul Rauf, who was leading funeral prayers, and and a lot of uniformed dignitaries, whether from the army or Pakistan Army or police, were attending it. So this was very clear that Pak, was sponsoring them. And this is the activity which happened there. As far as the other countries were concerned, I could pick up that Israel supported India's right to self-defense, but everywhere else, there were mixed signals calling for restraint or engagement. So much for what happened before and during. And obviously, when it is fast-paced operations, the militaries tend to keep a lot of operational security, and therefore the visibility into what they are doing will be always limited and constraints are there. What happened afterwards? We already have heard about these 7 delegations, and we are fortunate to have the chair who will also expound a little later. But what I saw was the challenge this time and in future will be the ends of the spectrum that we see of the conflict. India will always have this challenge of terrorism. Like I said, it is a state policy. So they will continue doing it. This is a challenge we are going to live with. My view is we should have deterrence by denial, primary, because that is important, what we do in Kashmir. Pakistan will always bring up the Kashmir, but the world might not be as involved in the first two, but where there surely will be, concerned, and this is not going away, will be, is South Asia a nuclear flashpoint? So strategically, this will become uh, a thing that we need to think about. Okay, prognosis for further talks. I would like to take your mind to actually what we did in 1971, because that is very germane. In the military, we always say that we go to war after we shape the battlefield. That is our preferred, option. In 1971, for about 9 months, from March to December, our delegations visited almost 70 countries. The Prime Minister herself, I think she went to 3 places. And even during the conflict, we had challenges which we were fortunate to overcome in those 2 weeks at the United Nations, both at the Security Council, where we prevented any resolution till the very end, and that came only after calling for ceasefire. And also, we had an arrangement with the powers that be, and especially Soviet Union helped us. But in that case, the military was used as a means of last resort, right? So therefore, the situation is really not comparable, but you look at the preparation that if you are ending up in war, there is a lot of preparation to be done. That's my point. As far as, 26/11, 2016, Pulwama, perhaps there was no time for us to draw anybody's attention on this. Now, what are we looking at the situation? What is the prognosis for further talks? The PM in his address has said that India will only engage with Pakistan on 2 issues: terrorism and the return of POK. So this is our stated policy. And then, of course, we are all aware that after August 2019, our one-to-one diplomatic missions have been totally downgraded. So what exists today are the DGMO level talks, that is the hotline, and of course, I think between the intelligence community. So this is the messaging that we have. Where do we go from here? Militaries, to my mind, are meant to deter war. Only if they are forced, they should be able to fight one. So what is my guess? What is going to happen? Firstly, the likelihood of Op Sindoor 2.0 looks to be big. So both sides would be preparing. It's not one-sided, so it is both sides. But the bigger question is, will we achieve peace after that? That is the question. So at the end, like your first start point was, we are a country which is a rising power. We need to grow. We need to get to 2047, far better than what we are today. Will that happen? I think at some point we will have to look at having a dialogue because lack of dialogue hampers this. What means we adopt, we'll have to see. Because otherwise, my fear is China is our primary adversary. It will be happy to backstop Pakistan and get us bogged down with Pakistan rather than allow us. So I think overall, there is a requirement to reassess, this aspect of diplomacy and war in our national security approach. Thank you.
General Saab, thank you very much. I want to really thank you because it was a very nice uh, interplay of diplomacy, strategic affairs, and the warfare that was involved. I really want to thank you very much. And thank you for pointing out some of these parallels, howsoever imperfect. 71, obviously, a place that we have certain reason to draw good lessons from. The need for preparation, the need for a holistic approach, and the fact that you can't run away from dialogue at the end of the day, no matter what are the signalings that you have to go and give, especially to your own people at a particular proximate time. I want to ask you a question or two before we let go of you, and then we'll come back to you later. General Saab, you mentioned something about these proxies sort of let in and then let loose, and therefore operating with a certain amount of independence. I would like to hear a little bit about you because let me say this to you. The biggest issue that we face in the international community is, where is the evidence? Now, this business that they are behind everybody knows they are no good, 2611, that's all very well. But when people ask you this question, they are actually putting you in the dock like a courthouse. Where is the direct evidence of this? They are bad guys, we know that. Where is the evidence? Now, the evidence obviously at that stage is difficult. Now we are getting some of it, etc. Now, if you say this TRF and gang, the people who even we accuse, were a bit footloose, then let's just think about it. Then the issue of determining proximate connection rather than the fact that they are their proxies becomes a little tough. So I want you to think a little bit about it. The other thing I want to point out to you, do you think that signaling of the kind that no talks till terror ends? Now, what do you think most of the world is telling you? They say, look, how you can't have preconditions on the subject and then say you won't do talks. Now, we can keep on our side saying this is signaling, this, that, and the other. But frankly, from the other person's perspective, the thing is, are you not asking Ukraine and Russia to have talks? People are also talking about Israel and Gaza to have talks. Now, if one says, I won't do anything till the other, how does this move? This is not the way the world is structured. Uh, just 2 minutes of yours. What is your thinking as a military man and all that? I fully understand signaling domestic. General Saab, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, sir.
Did you hear what I said?
Actually, you got cut in the second question.
Okay, I'll just say the first question you heard. My second one was, the world, of course, turns around and says, for obvious reasons, that talk. Now, we know we have this issue about Kashmir. Let's leave that aside. We'll come to that later. But if you say no talks till terrorism comes to an end, I mean, you will understand that most people they'll say politely to you, yes, yes, we understand. But in their own minds, what are they going to say? How is this going to happen? If the conversation is about terror, you need to have the conversation. After all, if I may say, Russia and Ukraine are being asked to talk. Gaza, the Israelis and the Hamas are being asked. So I'm only looking at contemporary things. But from the perspectives of those who are not proximate, who are far away but in a position to give advice, even if it is gratuitous. And I'm not going into mediation, Mr. Trump style, etc. Leave all that out. So, how do you square this up as a military man? Briefly, then we'll turn to the other. Sir, the
Yeah,
screen is yours.
right, sir. So these 2 points. First thing is, you would be aware, sir, that terrorism today, rather terrorist activity in Kashmir, we have been able to manage very well, and that is the point you also made uh, in recent times, right? I would take, I was there for I don't know how many years from the 90s, uh, and it was at its peak around 25 years back when we were, uh, you know, uh, around the turn of the 2000s. That time, the number of terrorists being killed and our soldiers being killed was very, very high. And from there, we have been able to work at it. And we were always clear as security practitioners that we are not the solution. We will take it to a particular point, and after that, the political process has to kick in. There is no other way out of this. This is my understanding because we have seen very closely, and in very many cases, uh, after a particular action, or we apprehended a person who was a big terrorist. Often he cited that there was an opportunity when he saw us so close, not only at our level, but at levels of some of the highest people. I can't really disclose now who it was, but they were the political, they were the ministers and so on. So there was an opportunity, and I shudder to think if what would have happened if somebody would have been knocked out, point one. But it was much more probable at that time, right? Because insurgency was at that level. This is point one. There have been spoiler violence, as you know. Chatti Singh Pura is one. Whenever talks peace process progressed, simultaneously somebody would come and spoil it. So we used to call this spoiler violence. And this would happen, and we had to be. Nadi Marg was there. There are so many things. Okay. I am a proponent of uh, understanding India's strategic culture in taking decisions and our history, which is there. If you miss out on history, how we achieved anything, we are going to do the same things again. This is my view. And if I look at 1971, it was a very complex thing. The world knew we had defeated Pakistan. But the challenge, and we had 93,000 prisoners. This is highest after World War II, right? Even I don't think World War II had so many, but we had at that time. And on the other hand, we had a complex challenge of, uh, you know, Bangladesh. We had to also, they were stakeholders. And at that time, we chose to talk. And that's how your Shimla agreement came up in 1972. There is a lot as a military person that we felt we could have actually negotiated better, harder. But we fully appreciate that there would have been constraints. But what happened? We haven't gone to war after that. Kargil and all are limited wars. But we have actually, as two nations, we have not gone. So you have to also understand that peace comes at a price. Everything will not work in negotiations to your benefit. And it all depends on. So my understanding is you have to negotiate. That's my, I mean, I've been 40 years in the military, right? We will hit when we want to hit. But that is not the end state. The end state is durable peace.
Jan very well said. As they say, generals are the last ones who want war, and I fully understand. But your reference to Kashmir end 1990s, early 2000 reminds me of my own days heading the UN division in MEA. When this NHRC was set up, people have no idea of what happened and what was going on. The ICRC and the battles we had with them.
Yes.
At some stage, we can get set together over a cup of tea. Great. Uh, Mr. Kaushik, let me turn to you. Jenza, thank you. Mr. Kaushik. So, the crux of this entire effort, was a very interesting effort, which was members of parliament, as I said, opposition heavy, their involvement, India's national resolve to put this across to people. Now, Mr. Kashyap, I don't know how many years you did at the Lok Sabha Secretariat, but as an old warhorse of the civil service, let me just say some things to you. The most celebrated case of multi-party action by India overseas is 1994, when Prime Minister Narasimha Rao asked the then leader of the opposition, Sri Atul Bihari Vajpayee, the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Sri Farooq Abdullah, and with Salman Khurshid, who was our Minister of State then, to go to the UN's Commission for Human Rights and effectively derail uh, Pakistan's attempt to put India in the dock. It was brilliantly done. There's a lovely story to it, as you know, has been repeated many a times, with Vajpayee ji saying that, "Arey bhai, जीत हो तो आपकी, फंस गए तो मैं, लेकिन जाना तो पड़ेगा." And Salman Khurshid साहब saying, "उसके बाद मेरा political career तो खत्म." But that's okay. My own experience of political parties and political leaders in India from over nearly 40 years in the diplomatic service abroad is that they are not just strong in their defense of India with one voice, but they are one of the most effective voices. And I can tell you that in the delegation that I was with, the mere fact it was led of the opposition made a huge impact with all the countries in the world people recognize. Now, I want to ask you, what do you think would have been the thought processes, etc.? Because I'm told the last time we had a multi-party delegation was after the parliament attack. And for reasons that I don't know, we've even stopped the practice of sending members of parliament to the United Nations, which was a time-lived, long tradition in India going back literally to the 1950s, if I recall the autobiography or the biography of Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. So what do you think was the thinking? How do you resonate with it? What do you think about it? And you're sitting in Canada, I mean, no matter our bilateral kind of thing, the fact is that there's a vibrant democracy and, you know, you can feel this. So how do you think all of this came about, and what do you think was the ideas, and how should it be taken forward? The screen is yours, Mr. Kaushik.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Puri. Thank you, Professor Charan Singh, for inviting me to this very interesting conversation. I feel very comfortable being chaired by Ambassador Puri because I know his moderation skills from the past. So he is going to lead us to come to certain conclusions or certain messages that our audience today is looking forward to. So in that vein, let me try and answer your question, which I reframe as why these parliamentarians? What purpose do they serve? You know, we all know it is tried to say that they are the representatives of our people. They are the people who represent our country, and therefore their voice is what matters the most, next to, you know, the public in general, the citizenry in general, you know, lending their voice to any policy or planning of the government. More importantly, we sometimes get overwhelmed by the politics of parliamentarians and by the fact that they are politicians pursuing their individual goals of winning the next elections and their party goals of whatever manifestos or whatever you know, policy purposes or other agenda that they want to pursue when they come into the government. Now, this kind of overwhelming perception of politicians being politicians has to be first of all, you know, diluted with a mindfulness of the fact that members of parliament are also under oath. They are officers of the government, of the larger governance system. They take an oath of allegiance not only to the Constitution of India, but they take an oath that they will uphold the sovereignty and integrity of India. And they also take an oath that they will faithfully discharge the duty upon which they enter after the oath. So this is, I think, what guides us in taking decisions to field our parliamentarians for larger public purposes, policy purposes. And this diplomacy that we dearly required after what happened in those 3 days from 7th to 10th of June, it is important to understand that they were under this oath and therefore they were bound to discharge that duty. The choice of parliamentarians, and we can come to that later. I'm sure there are going to be questions about that during our Q&A session, is very well made, and that is the choice that the government has a privilege to make, because they are the ones, like you mentioned, the repartee between Mr. Vajpayee and Mr. Salman Khurshid. It is the government who takes the responsibility. They can't, they have to therefore take decisions as to what should be the constitution of each of these delegations that are mounted. 7 of them were mounted. Now, coming after this, confirmation that they are officers of the country and therefore they are representing under an oath, we come to know we have to find out how are they prepared. You have been a diplomat all your life. You know that, you are trained to undertake diplomacy. General Saab is trained to defend our country's borders. Parliamentarians, how are they trained? So they have to be trained, and that is something that has been happening from the time that we got parliamentarians. To give you an example, the very first members of parliament delegation that went to the United Nations General Assembly was during the UN's 11th session back in 1954. So we, as a country, recognized the importance of fielding our people's representatives and not just the party in power's representatives, but a collection of a spectrum of representatives to United Nations and to other forums. So for that, they have to be prepared. The democratic world realized this long time back. The International Parliamentary Union was established back in 1889. And it is at that time that they realized that, we have to involve the representatives in conversations. And the basis of, or the raison d'etre, initial raison d'etre of IPU was how to stop war. Because Europe at that time was getting into a lot of economic strife, and there were situations that they required to, express respective countries' positions on. And that is where IPU became important. And later on, both during the First and the Second World War, IPU played a role in getting parliamentarians and people together. Within the Commonwealth, we have the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And this goes down not only at the federal level, that is the members of parliament, but members of the legislative assemblies at the sub-federal level as well are members of the CPA. So in those meetings that these members of parliament attend regularly, there's a biannual IPU meeting, there is an annual CPA assembly, and there are several conversations on several specific issues in between. So during those times, these people get trained. The members of parliament get trained as to how to listen to others and their perspectives, how to chisel out our own perspectives, and how to express that perspective in a manner that serves the purposes of the country. Now, keeping this in mind, we have not only for war, even for other purposes, mounted delegations of members of parliament at various times. Who knows this better than you, having served in so many of these, international intergovernmental, served as India's representatives in international intergovernmental organizations. UN events, we are regularly sending people. We sent, as I mentioned, in 1954. In 1963, after the Indochina War, uh, Mr. Sudhir Ghosh, the member of, the noted member of parliament, he went to USSR and USA thrice, in fact, to garner their support after the Indochina conflict. 1971 has been mentioned already, 70 delegations, including 3 by the Prime Minister herself. 1988, Mr. Vajpayee was sent by Rajiv Gandhi, the Prime Minister, to the UN General Assembly to argue for total nuclear disarmament. And he led a delegation, and he was, of course, prepared by our government officials, by diplomats, and he went and made a very impactful statement on behalf of India on either you have total nuclear disarmament or you don't create the equalities and equities that are necessary for the international global order. 1994, multi-party delegation to Geneva that Ambassador Puri you mentioned, regarding the human rights violations in Kashmir and how this multi-party delegation defended our cause. 2001, again a multi-party delegation with Mr. Vajpayee, Mr. Sangma was, leading it at that time as minister. Mr. S.S. Ahluwalia was there. They went to Brussels. 2008, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh sent a delegation after the Mumbai terror attack. 2012, Mr. Advani went, sent by the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, to UN General Assembly. So the point I'm making is that the training that they get by participating in International Parliamentary Union and in CPA, and the briefing that they get from the diplomats before they go, prepares them well to be the rightful representatives of our country in those places. Now, the last point I want to mention is, what does the parliament do? So my role, I'm here in this conversation because I have been additional secretary in the Lok Sabha Secretariat. What do? We have had the Bureau of Parliamentary Studies and Training since we started the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And the main purpose of BPST always has been to have a conversation with members of parliament, to educate them on the issues, to provide them the material that is necessary for them to understand. My experience with the members of parliament has been that they're very intelligent people. Not only are they intelligent, they know what matters at the grassroots, because they have risen from there. They understand the pulse of the masses, and they understand how to reflect that pulse of the masses in the parliament. But how do you get the depth of understanding, a research-based depth of understanding, to make a good case for the policy that you want to profess, is where Bureau of Parliamentary Studies and Training used to be there. During my time in the Lok Sabha, the then Speaker Sumitra Mahajan started what we called as the Speaker's Research Initiative. In that, We used to have, during the parliament session, all three sessions, we would have Thursday afternoon meetings on topics which we consulted the members of parliament on, regarding what do they want to know about, what do they want to speak about, and we would get the best of the brains from India or abroad
Sir, a
to
small
have a
request
conversation.
in a minute or two, sir. In a minute or two, if I can request
Okay,
you.
I'm concluding in half a minute. So this speaker research initiative was led by the desire of the members of parliament to understand what are the issues that are contemporary on which they have to either speak in the parliament or in IPU, CPA, and other places. This has now been converted into what is called as PRIDE, which is the Parliamentary Research and Training Institute for Democracies. So the democratic role that the members of parliament have is necessary, and therefore they have to be prepared for it. And the Secretariat of the Parliament has been equipping them with all the wherewithal and material that they require. And I am sure that the members of Parliament, all the 59 of the, 33, all the members of Parliament that went to these seven delegations, they would have benefited from this long journey of getting themselves educated. Thank you.
Kaushik, thank you very much. I want to make 2 points from what you said. Very importantly, everyone should understand these were government delegations. They were not what are called parliamentary delegations. Government has a right to choose, but they chose well. That's the important thing. And who did they choose from? What Mr. Kaushik said. People who are rooted, whose voice carries something which resonates with the other person. And secondly, people who are well trained, honed, and matured. Believe me, the voice of an advocate and the voice of a practitioner can easily be understood, and other people understand. In all matters, there's an issue of the mind, but there's also an issue of the heart. Very important. Kaushik Saab, thank you. Professor Kondapalli, you can't have to come on to say. Hear me, sir.
Yes.
Please.
Can I go ahead?
10 minutes, if I can request you.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Ambassador Puri. And let me also thank the EGROW Foundation and Professor Charan Singh for this invite. I think this is a very good exercise, post-mortem of the Operation Sindoor and what the lessons we learned. My focus is basically on China. The title is Diplomacy at War. I mean, this can be interpreted in two ways, that the diplomats were basically trying to douse the warlike situation in the India-Pakistan context, or the diplomats are at war in the India-Pakistan context. However, I think as General Rajeshwar mentioned, classification is important. This is not a war. International definition of a war is about 3,000 and above casualties. And in the conflict, we had 21 Indian casualties, mainly civilian, and 8 military personnel. In the case of Pakistan, it was mentioned 40 to about 150, mostly civilian again in this. So this is not a war, definitely, by international definition on the India-Pakistan context, the May 6th to 10th conflict. So that is one clarification that is necessary. Second, to answer Professor Charan Singh's point on the economy and its impact, the statement given by the Indian government on the date of soon after the May 6th, 7th incident on the terror camps, the Indian government said the campaign is focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. Focused, measured, and non-escalatory, meaning India has no intention to escalate this conflict. And there are about 40 odd levels of escalation. It was alluded to by General Rajeshwar on the transition between a subconventional, conventional nuclear conflict. There are something like 40 odd escalatory levels. So what India is trying to mention is we want to get back home. We don't want to continue the war in a conventional sense, not even about nuclear. And I think this is the important signaling from India. When we look at Putin, Zelensky, when we look at Netanyahu, Hamas, Khamenei, and other leaders, the conflict has been going on for ages. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is more than 3 years now, and the Israel-Gaza-Iran is also now becoming a very intensive. So which means basically India is trying to convey that we do not want to continue the war. We want to get back to our economic growth rates. So that is a very important signal by saying that this is non-escalatory in nature. From the beginning, this was the position that India had taken. I think that was a larger position, and that partly addresses Professor Charan Singh's question on the economic growth rates. So from the beginning, Indian government was very clear. Indian political leadership is very clear on the limits to where we go in this conflict. I think that is a very important signaling that we should note. But coming to the main aspect of diplomacy, and my focus is basically on China. So I will mention a few statements that China made during the conflict and analyze the position that China had undertaken. I will focus on diplomatic effort rather than the military, which of course has been one of the key areas of this conflict. But to stick to the title, the first thing after the Pahalgam attacks on April 22nd is the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Kuo Chia-kun mentioned that they condemned the attack. That was quite a strong statement. They firmly oppose all forms of terrorism. And then we mourn for the lives lost and express sincere sympathies to the bereaved families and the injured. So this was a positive statement. But unlike other countries like Israel, Russia, or others, there was no support provided by China to India. On the other hand, soon in the United Nations Security Council Al-Qaeda Committee 1267, China supported Pakistan in removing the Resistance Front name and included the Baluch Liberation Army and the Majid Brigade in the United Nations Security Council Committee regarding the terrorism issue. So, in other words, while China paid lip service, it protected Pakistan from the subsequent damage if the Resistance Front would have been included in the 1267 committee report. The Resistance Front twice owned the responsibility, but a third time they denied their responsibility in the Pahalgam attacks. So this is the terrorism aspect related in terms of diplomacy. But generally, the Chinese have supported Pakistan in the 1267 committee when we look at Masood Azhar, Zakirul Rahman, and a host of others. So every year, India will go with a dossier and provide evidence. The Chinese say this is not adequate, and that's the end of the story. However, in 2020, the Chinese finally, after the American pressure, they finally acknowledged that there are terrorists in Pakistan, and proscription under the 1267 committee have been mentioned. So on terrorism issue, China has been a little bit careful, but was supporting Pakistan. The Chinese position here is that in relation to India, China supports Pakistan. However, when the terrorists have attacked Chinese citizens, and 34 Chinese were killed in Pakistan so far in the last 6-7 years. The last one was the recent one in Karachi airport when 2 Chinese were killed. So in this case, the Chinese were insisting that the Pakistanis should help them trace the terrorists. The Global Times editor, Hu Shuqin, wrote an article saying that after the Dasu hydroelectricity project terror attack, when 12 Chinese were killed, the Global Times said that they should launch missiles on the TTP and other terror organizations. Now, that is the position they took when Chinese were involved. But when Pahalgam happened, China took a different position altogether. And so this is the difference between the Chinese killed in Pakistan and Indians killed by the Pakistani terrorists. So that's one point that I want to make here on terrorism issue. Second is China's foreign minister phoned up the Pakistani counterpart, Ishaq Dar, 5 days after the terror incident on April 27th. And he said, China-Pakistan have ironclad friendship, all-weather strategic cooperative partnership. But he said, China fully understands Pakistan's legitimate security concerns. And he also said, China supports Pakistan in safeguarding its sovereignty and security interests. The most interesting part of Wang Yi's conversation is he suggested for a swift and fair investigation into Pahalgam attacks. Now, I want to give a context. In 2009, there was an Urumqi incident. There were 189 casualties in 2009 compared to about 145 in Mumbai attacks. However, nobody noticed the 2009 incident, and nobody asked for a fair investigation into the Chinese incident in Urumqi. Secondly, the Australian Prime Minister asked for a fair investigation into the COVID outbreak in the World Health Assembly debates. The Chinese swooped on the Australians, banned all the trade, affecting about $120 billion. So China took a different position by coercive diplomacy, both in Urumqi terror attack as well as on the Australian Prime Minister. However, they were asking for a fair investigation in Pahalgam attacks. So you can see the double standard here of the Chinese position regarding the Pahalgam attacks and the investigation. Indian response was when the several terror incidents happened, we invited the Pakistanis. But after the investigation, Pakistanis went back home and said this is done by Indian agencies. So we finally gave up this inviting Pakistani officials for any terror investigation. And we took a unilateral position as we did on May 6th night. So, yeah, so I wanted to also mention about the diplomatic support that China provides for Pakistan in several spheres. For example, in the United Nations, IAEA and NSG, in multilateral institutions like SEO, ASEAN, Afghan peace process. One day after the ceasefire, China and the Taliban and the Pakistani foreign minister met. And so China was trying to kind of bring together this trilateral meetings between. So finally, I wanted to say that while China wanted to give a picture that it is neutral or a peacemaker or trying to use a gray zone tactics or trying to suggest that it is a responsible power. There are actually a lot of chinks in the Chinese armor in relation to the Operation Sindoor. Finally, I want to say that while China had suggested to a de-escalation and for a political solution, the Chinese support to Pakistan neutralized any of those neutrality-related aspects. Lastly, I wanted to say, basically, the Chinese intention was to see how India could be balanced through Pakistan, but also to address Professor Charan Singh's question. They began with the ban on magnets, rare earth metals, and recently with the Foxconn asking Chinese engineers to get out of India. So there is also the economic growth rate related aspects that China is focusing on in relation to this conflict. So there is a lot more involved in Chinese diplomatic aspects. Thank you.
Professor Kondapalli, thank you very much. I think there should be no doubt in anyone's mind. To echo Professor Kondapalli, it ain't grey, it's almost black. They have interest in India given our size of the market, but at the same time they have geopolitical interests and this entire business of hegemony in Asia, etc. There are many factors to it. I want to take something from Professor Kondapalli to tell you all something. Why did these delegations go to these 33 countries? You know, what are these 32 countries? Which are these 32 countries? Barring one or two, these are all countries which are on the Security Council. China notably left out for good reasons by India. Either they are permanent members or they are countries which are serving on the Security Council during 2025 or 2026. Please note, Pakistan is a non-permanent member of the Security Council during 2025 and 2026. Indeed, in the month of July this year, right now, they hold the presidency of the Security Council. Now, let's be very clear. While let's be also very clear that a country like India can't be intimidated, etc. But a lot of issues of misadventures, embarrassments, political pressures, etc., can be called at the Security Council. And when you are in the presidency, when you are on this council, there are various opportunities that come your way. It was perhaps with very good design that all these countries were chosen so that we could brief them not only on what happened, but our positions on terror and who their dinner partner was, i.e. member of the Security Council, so that as and when they read out to them with whatever pudding and pan masala that they have to offer, those people listen to them, understand that possibly their interests lie with India and say, thank you for the invitation, lovely dinner, but shall we leave this subject on because you ain't exactly what you're claiming that you are. This is one of the most important things that needed to be taken home. The fact that the choice of the countries was purely because of international reasons. India not being on the Security Council, Pakistan being on the Security Council, and that membership affording you a certain play, I won't say tremendous, but a certain play, which is important politically for a country like India, a rising power, to be mindful of. Professor Deshpande, economics drives everything. We all know that. So the screen is yours, sir. Again, would I say 10 minutes if you can. And Professor Charan Singh, to you and Vivek, a request. Can we go on till 5:45, please? Professor Deshpande.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. After, am I audible? Am I audible? Yes. Okay. After listening to the stalwarts, starting with Ambassador Puri, then General Rajeshwar, Atul, Kaushik, and Professor Kondapalli. Professor Kondapalli ended to give me the clue, that is, where is the economics? And all through the three speakers, I found one thing very common, that we are in a situation where economics is the root of most of the things. Now, let me begin with, what was the intention of Pahalgam? They had not done anything to Pakistan. They had not done anything to terrorists. They had no connection whatsoever. And I don't want to give religion as a excuse. But then they wanted to cripple the economic activities which had picked up after withdrawing 370 and making Jammu and Kashmir independent to move economic forward and get into the mainstream economic growth of India. It has to be stalled. Brake has to be administered on it. Number two, to create a threat so that a brake is on the economic growth, on the economy. And if you look into the places where the terrorist attack have taken place all through, we clearly can make out that all these were intended economic breaks for many things. I mean, excluding the attack on the army camp. Then there are spoiler vibes. I like it. The spoiler vibes in the sense that it spoils the confidence of people in working or going ahead. People feel little shaken. Now, Pahalgam, the Amarnath Yatra is coming up. But then each one of them have in mind, what if? And there are two enemies here. The first enemy is the terrorist. They come and attack. The second enemy, and which was very prominently attacking Indian government, saying that Pahalgam was not protected. What were the army people doing? Why protection was not given to the camp? In the sense that failure of the government, which should go deep in the mind of the citizens so that the brake is applied on the economic front. Now, this is something, the intentions of, and it comes out of the ego, it comes out of the competition. India is growing and we would like to capture Indian market. We would like to make it slow. Now, all that is fine. But then, very interestingly and very geniusly, our Prime Minister had sent the diplomats. And the choice, Atul Kaushik ji had said very clearly, the choice was made very carefully. Such a good choice, nobody, any Indian citizen would not have expected better than this. The choice of the parliamentarian was made with a lot of thinking behind it. They were given a task to build the economic confidence as well as to bring forth that this is the kind of thing that our enemy countries, our neighbors are trying to break our economy. They wanted to keep the pace, and that pace has to be kept out of trade. 91, we accepted trade centricism and we are very fast in the trade. Now, we didn't want to have a break on that. It is that in mind. Second, to tell the people that the attack was a terrorist attack and an intended terrorist attack in order to cripple the economy or economic hubs, which are really going ahead faster. The third thing that I would like, the cost of the terrorism. The cost of terrorism is two-way. Number one, that Pakistan also has the cost of terrorism in the sense that now they have put a huge amount of money on the defense budget. We have put about 1 lakh crores purchases now. Now, the cost of terrorism is that we have to withdraw the money from the development-oriented projects, growth-oriented issues, and put it into the protection from the terrorists, put it into the protection of the borders, both. I mean, it is either India, Pakistan or China, anybody has to do it, provided there is a threat, and this threat is a continuous thing. This is the one which has costing the three countries enormously out of their development budget. The three countries, India, Pakistan, and now Bangladesh too. Now it will join to increase its defense budget. The cost of containing terrorism, therefore, has to be counted on four fronts. Number one, to prepare for the terrorist attacks, which have a very low probability. But then the probability is so thin that we cannot predict it. Second, that not only be prepared, also prepare the kind of arsenal so that it can meet and the intellectual activity which can meet any kind of threat in future. Third, the manpower which has to be created or is essentially withdrawn from the other economic activities. And it is certain that defense can be an economic activity, provided they are put into the economic activities for the growth purpose. But then a lot of it is only for the defense purposes. Fourth, that all this requires our scientists and our technical know-how to be used in an area which is slightly different. Of course, we use it in defense production and trade of defense equipments. That is something which is adding up now. Make in India is adding up now. These four aspects are there that we need to protect. The re-engineering of the entire spoilage. That infrastructure gets spoiled, roads get spoiled, the aerodromes get spoiled, and many equipments get spoiled. Now, it is essential to re-engineer all these and also equip ourselves for the kind of future attack of which not only the probability is not known, of which the quantum is also not known. We do not know what will happen next. And each one of these attacks had been exactly centered or focused on our economic hubs like Mumbai, Parliament, Delhi. It doesn't go in a smaller town or smaller place. It goes exactly in the places where they would like to create the terror. And that is the one which is intended to cripple or put brake on the economic activity. Last point I'll make is that this economic impact of the delegations which have gone is huge. Economic impact. Yes, they have built India's image. They have built India's case in front of the world leaders. But more than that, the thing which they achieved, which possibly was not on the agenda, but was hidden in the agenda, is that the economic power that India is emerging has been put forth to each one of them and to every country. And that is certainly had gone down in their mind effectively. And I think I heard a few of the parliamentarians speak. The way they had put the entire thing was not focused entirely on cursing some country or some state or cursing the terrorist act. They had both sides. And the more important side was how India is progressing and how this progress gets affected by these skirmishes. We are not interested in it. We are absolutely would like to have peace and trade. We would like to have development and human-oriented development. And therefore, the point that our diplomacy had in its seed was that India needs to grow. India needs to go further. India does not mind such kind of skirmishes. And if at all it comes, we are capable to meet it. Thank you, sir.
Professor Deshpande, thank you very much. This was excellent in what you summed up. India is a country of interest to the world, to individual countries and to the aggregate. And that's because of what we are, the growing economic power of India. Excellently said. Other than that, sir, guns and butter, that's an old economics paradigm, and we need to look at what we can do. But you've summed it up so very well. India is a country of interest to the world. And I can tell you at least the 5 countries that I went, without any doubt, that was the single most important element for them to listen to us. And when I say listen, take into account our sensitivities and say, it shall remain at the back of our mind, even though we have to take decisions vis-a-vis other factors there. Extremely important.
Sir, one
sir,
sentence.
Sorry, please. Go ahead.
Can I say one sentence?
Please.
I was attending as a spectator the European Union meeting in Paris. Yeah. And I was surprised that 40 minutes all the participants were discussing India and India's trade entry and how do we deal with it? What are the commodities we have to deal with it? And this is something which made me proud. And this was long back, not recently, long back, about a decade back. Thank you.
So, Professor Deshpande, you're right. Look, we were identified by a gentleman called Jim O'Neill. You would, I hope, recall this chap. In my opinion, he should be given not a Bharat Ratna, at least a Padma Bhushan, because he changed our thinking about ourselves from being a developing country to thinking that we are a power nation. You know, mindsets make a lot of difference. So, perfectly fine. Look, I want to make one other point to you, other than the one about the Security Council and why the choice of country. Almost everyone looked around to see India, in a sense, put forth much more liberally, much more boldly, and much more often its parliamentary democracy. And Mr. Kaushik was listening to me, Atulji, without doubt, we need to go beyond IPU and Commonwealth. We need to have these groups. We need to have parliamentarians going. The UN also very much. Everyone appreciated parliamentarians coming. There's an idiom by which these people interact, and let's understand. Just as Indian MPs make decision-making differences to the polity in India, so do they in other countries. So that's important. Let's open this up for those who want to ask questions. I know we are right at the time which was scheduled for this, but I think IGRO has been nice enough to say 10, 15 minutes more. So if there are questions, great. Otherwise, for a very un-Indian thing, we would be doing actually ending on time. So Yagya Raichura. Yeah. Dialogue, yes. No, your points are excellent. Does anybody have any question? Please go ahead.
I had one question here from the audience, which I'm just reading. And because all of you are here and very important people are here, how important it is for India to be neutral in almost every situation? That's the other question. You may like to address, Ambassador, as you want to go ahead. And then there was one more question which has been coming up, and that is the priorities. So should we, under Viksit Bharat, prioritize economics over politics? So I thought I leave these are the questions in the audience box. So I leave it to you, Ambassador Puri.
What was the second question?
One is on economic priorities over political priorities.
Yeah.
And then one is how important is it for India to be neutral in almost every situation?
Neutral. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other question from anyone else?
Yes, sir. If I'm audible,
Yeah.
am I audible?
Go.
All right. So this is Purushinder Singh from Cuts International. My question is straight and direct. The parliamentarians which had gone out to 33 countries, we see that it was well received. However, the world does not see it as well received as we see it. What more could we have done in this regard in terms of in future when incidents happen? What can we do so that at least our take is well heard? Well, people, good people come and meet apart from Indian diaspora meeting over dinner.
Okay, noted. Charanji, may I answer some of these questions simply because I have to be there?
There's one more hand which you may like to
please go ahead.
Which is Nitin Kumar.
Nitin Kumar.
Please. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. All. Yes, sir.
Nitin ji, camera on kariye.
Yes, sir. Yes, a moment. Sir, good evening to all of you, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, I am from Karnataka, and my question is to all of you, I should say. Sir, the war against enemy country, we call it as an enemy country. Since I born, I know that Pakistan is an enemy country. Sir, can we go back to the root cause? What exactly causes the war here? Because some of the people in the remote area, they're celebrating war. And what action does government will take against the people who actually in favor of the enemy country? What actually we want to do? for what action that we need to take. So that could be the straightforward question that I wanted to ask, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, the floor is open to all our colleagues if you want to say something. But if you agree, I'll say a few general points to you. You asked me this question about trade and global perception. Somebody from Cuts, is that right? I want to tell you this. Yeah. So, I want to tell you something very clearly. These delegations were mounted almost with a very precise agenda, which is Pakistan sitting on the Security Council and misdemeanors caused at that particular entity, which is an entity where there are not de facto but de jure kind of resolutions, and which have political impacts in terms of the way we perceive ourselves. That's exactly the thing. Professor Charan Singh, you were asking me several questions about prioritization. Look, guns and butter is not a new thing. Class 001, you learn it. As you grow up in the world, responsibilities also come about it. Let's look at a case which is happening in front of us. The United States is turning around and telling the Europeans, you are the second largest economy in the world, the second most important partner of NATO. Why don't you put up your spend? Because, this defense can't be simply by me. Everybody has to be part of it. Look, peace and security and development, in a sense, are hand in hand. You need to do it. Optimization, that's what leaderships are about. That's exactly the decisions that got to be taken. I know that at the moment we've had to push up spends on defense spending, etc. It's a necessary requirement. Then there was this question about Pakistan and so on. I say, please understand what General Rajeshwar had to say. The Pakistan army pursues this not from tactical reasons. There is an old stated state policy of Pakistan. You can call it this cuts by a thousand, this hurt by 1,000 cuts. You can call it by different names. But fomenting terrorism in India, certainly state policy. Whether they liked it or they wanted it, actually they have become the fountainhead of terrorism in the world. There's hardly any major terrorist attack in the world which can't get traced in some way or the other to Pakistan. Osama bin Laden being perhaps the most important case. Yet, I want to tell all of you, while sitting in India, we'd like to, think of things like poof, Pakistan, dismiss them. Unfortunately, they are a nearly 200 million strong country, geostrategically very well located. They make themselves available to global powers, earlier the Western ones, today also China, in various ways. So we, in a sense, have to live with it. I take you back to what the General Saab said. You have to be prepared. You need to be absolutely satark, if I use a military term. You need to be prepared for action, both defensive and offensive. At the same time, you need to be willing to engage in diplomacy and dialogue, but keep yourself focused on Viksit Bharat, because when you are Viksit, believe me, your abilities at being able to counteract against people who have inimical designs with you, and there will always be people to you, would be substantially of a different order, and you would be certainly in a much better position. The most important countries in the world are testimony to exactly this thing. Professor Charan Singh, if it's okay with you, can I hand this mic over to you?
Ambassador Puri, if you agree, we are ready to extend it by a few more minutes. If you want your panelists to come in, we are open to that idea.
So thank you very much, Professor Charan Singh. I was looking at the watch and the time frame given to me by your colleague. I'm very happy for my colleagues also to pitch in. I don't see General Rajeshwar available anymore. No.
There were no specific questions, sir, so I drop off.
Thank you. Professor Deshpande. You're muted, sir.
Sorry. Nothing more, sir, but I feel quite pained. We need to take the country ahead. That is our first priority. And the country ahead goes through the economic, and that's the strength we have gained. We are now fourth largest economy of the world, and we need to keep that pace. And if at all we have to keep that pace, we need to put down all these skirmishes, all these small activities. For that too, we have to invest. And that's a major thing. The diplomacy, the diplomats who had gone out in order to argue on behalf of this country have done their job the best, I should say, because they have made it very clear to people that we are growing and we need to grow. Thank you, sir.
Professor Deshpande, thank you very much. I think we are all on the same page. But, I also believe in a very liberal form of democracy. I'm not talking about the First Amendment rights of the US that, freedom of speech allows you to shout, there's a bomb in the hall. And even that's allowed. I don't want to say that. But, I accept it. In a sense, I'll tell you what they exchanged for all gentlemen said or didn't say, etc. And somebody else asked the question. Brother Charan Singh, believe me, it adds a certain kind of credibility. Just let's look at it like this. Let's not weigh ourselves too much. General Saab, you are here. We missed you for a little while. We were not seeing you. Do you have anything to add before we close this session?
Yeah, just 2 points. One is, the larger point of how security is managed in the valley.
Yeah.
And this has been the model for the last 3 decades, because this is very germane to one aspect which has come out in the webinar. And that is a good aspect. That has there been an intelligence and security, dip or blip, right? My sense is yes. There's no doubt about it. But how does this work? The work is security forces are always deployed and redeployed based on a joint meeting, which is done under, earlier it was the chief minister, now it's under the LG, in which the military commander, highest commander, they have a corps commander, and the DGP police sit down and work it out. Every place you don't have military, there are places where obviously as insurgency reduces, you thin that place out. But all these activities, I think, will need to have a relook. And the second point that I make is that, economic might is the fundamental basis on which military muscle can be built. There is no gainsaying that. You brought out very well about this guns and butter aspect. Every country has to decide. If America is pushing the Europeans, obviously there is something that they have now, understood, and they are doing it for themselves. They're nobody else. You're not doing for others. You're doing it for yourself. And based on your military muscle, diplomatic heft, the way I'm sure you will, agree, how our diplomats stridently move is when they are confident that the national security is looked after. Primary challenges, external security, and this kind of proxy war, which is sponsored from outside. So I think this is important. India, while it is Viksit, has to make sure that it decides the right amount of it. Otherwise, like what Professor Deshpande said, if we go by that kind of hypotheses, then obviously you can go very fast, but somebody will come, intervene, and it will bring you down. So you take your call as a country as to what is good for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. General Saab, very well said. Look, as we bring this webinar to an end, I want to make 2 or 3 broad points. One on specifics, then we'll come to the general. Look, what is it that India prides itself in? What is it that the world sees in India? One, of course, without any doubt, the 4th largest country, Viksit country, a country of interest. Their pockets get filled by our actions. It's perfectly fine. What's wrong with that? That's what you are. That's why we look at the Europeans and the Americans and others. Nothing wrong in that. Perfectly. The other thing is what we bring to the world. And I don't want to go into moral values, but we bring democracy to the world. We are the world's largest democracy. And so, therefore, when something happens with us, something that has impacts our entire social fabric is impacted, and it has global impact because terrorism is a global curse. When we reach out to the world and we use democracy as the forum to reach out, our parliamentarians from opposition parties, believe me, it sounds well, it echoes well, and it registers well. To expect people tomorrow to say that yes, terrorism is bad, nobody has any issue. Professor Kondapalli brought out that even the Chinese find it difficult to say anything against it, even though it's their friend. But putting a country of 200 million, let me say, in an isolated move, that's a very different take and perhaps very difficult and unlikely. Diplomacy, warfare, they're all. Let's end. It's for very good reason that South Bloc houses both the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs. It's the other side that you have the two domestic institutions, the Finance Ministry, in a sense, economics, and the Home Ministry, internal security, put together. Perhaps today, our challenge is not the linkage within South Bloc, but it's the linkages of South Bloc and North Bloc together. The bridging of what used to be called Rajpath now is called Kartavya Path. That, in my essence, is perhaps the most important thing. That takes me to several other aspects. We as a country also needs to de-siloize ourselves, move much more in doing things holistically. Fourth largest economy sounds very nice, but going from here onward, challenges the. Back to you. Thank you to EGRO for this absolutely wonderful discussion. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you, Professor Kondapalli, Professor Deshpande, General Saab, and Mr. Kaushik. I hope it's breakfast time now for you there, wherever you are in Canada. All the best.
Yeah, I think it is 6 a.m. up there, 6 or 6:30 a.m. Very, very thankful to you for accepting this invite at a short notice. And of course, I'm thankful to Professor Deshpande, Professor Kondapalli, and the General, and of course to you, Ambassador Puri. You have been you are the diplomat on the panel, and you are the one who had gone along with the delegation, so you had a first-hand experience of what is happening there. So I must thank each one of you for this excellent deliberation, a balanced deliberation, and I think a very, very informative deliberation. Many things I have learned today. I never knew how a war is defined. So Professor Kondapalli, thanks a lot for that. I really did not spend time to understand the duplicity that China practices. Thanks for bringing it out to our knowledge, all of us. So I think that is something which we have learned today. And from each one of you, I think we have all learned today. A very, very informative discussion. We'll be putting this out on the website tomorrow. And I'm sure this is such an important discussion. It's going to go a long way for everybody on both sides of the spectrum, that in a country which is going to go at the pace at which we are aiming, at the pace at which we are aspiring, and having looked at economic history, seeing Japan, the way they had lost decades, every little thing causes me a concern that is somebody trying to derail our growth trajectory. That's the most worrisome thing as an economist that comes to my mind. So today's discussion has been very, very enriching. I understand we have to be prepared for all eventualities as a country. And it's part of the growing up strategy that we are able to disseminate to each countryman, that this is the path we are following. And to follow this path, these are the sacrifices and these are the responsibilities. These are our rights which we need to follow. So I think all these are very, very important, very diversified country, very, very different. And therefore the issues that Mr. Atul Kaushik brought to our knowledge while interacting with the parliamentarians, and the role of the parliamentarians and the role of the government, I think is going to become far more important in days to come. That's what I gather from his discussion. General is right. Mighty the army, the bigger debtor it is to fight a war. I think, and you're right, generals are the last ones to recommend a war, because they know the eventualities and they know the casualties and they know eventually you have to end on a diplomatic table. 71 war also taught us that. So I think each one of you have brought on the table something very, very important. We have all learned from you. Thank you so much. Now, on this panel, all of us are about 60. And next week, we have a discussion on an economy which is aging. The speaker is from the IMF, and they have coined a new term, the silver economy, people getting elderly and what impact it has on the economy. So the gentleman is speaking to us from Washington, D.C. The timing is 6:30 to 7:30, and we'll have a discussion on the aging. Now you will ask me this question, we are in a young country, we are a young demographic country, 20 years, do we have to worry about aging? Japan, of course, has to worry because 40% of them are above 60. Yes, as the demographic dividend comes to an end in 20 years, and 20 years is not a very big time in a country's history, we are going to be overtaken by the aging problem. So we thought we should bring the issues of aging up front so that on our path to Viksit Bharat, our understanding of the small window that we have of 20 years is fully taken seriously, and the opportunity fully availed, the window properly utilized and optimally utilized. So welcome for the next Friday session on the silver economy. With that, let me thank each one of you once again. Tomorrow by noon, it will be on our webinar. You may like to use it, and have a great weekend. Thank you very much.